Right, so with the functions questions, the first one you've got is given that f of x equals x minus 9, right? So what they want for part A is find the inverse function of x. All right, so if f of x is x minus 9, then the inverse of that function is what you need to find. Yeah? So what we do, we start with our original function. All right? So let's say y equals x minus 9. All right? Then you want to make the x the subject of the equation. All right, change it around. So that basically is y plus 9 equals x. Okay, and then what we do is we swap the x and the y. So the inverse function is y equals x plus 9. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are two schools of thought on this. So what you could do is swap the x and the y right at the beginning and then rearrange to make y the subject. Or you can make x the subject and swap the x and y at the end. I'll show you both ways. So from here, the very first thing there, we could turn that into x equals y minus 9. I swap right at the beginning. And then get y on its own, which turns out to be the same thing. X plus 9. Does that make sense? Yeah? So there's A or B. They give you the same result. It's just a choice of whether you swap at the beginning or swap at the end. All right? And so the inverse function of x, right, equals x plus 9. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. And then part B. It says inverse function of x, and you put 4 into it. So the thing that you have in the brackets is your input. It's the value that you put into the inverse function or whatever function you're referring to. All right? So that basically you replace the x with a 4. So that is effectively 4 plus 9 equals 13. That's your answer. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah. So you just replace it with x?
Yeah, you're just replacing the x with a 4. So the input basically is whatever you are acting on. All right. Any questions on that one?
No.
No? All right. So the next one, you've got f of x equals 5x minus 3, right? And again, we want to find the inverse. Okay. Do exactly the same thing. Y equals 5x minus 3. And I'm going to stick with my way of doing it, which is to arrange for x and swap at the end. All right. So you've got y plus 3, taking that across, and then divide by 5 equals x. All right. And so therefore swapping the x and the y, so that becomes, the x becomes a y, and the y is going to become an x. Therefore the function is actually this. That. All right. And in your answer, you can write it with the f minus 1 notation. And there we go. Yeah? Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. And then we have the next part of the question. Fairly repetitive, this one. This time you're just putting 3 into the function itself. Replace the x with a 3. 3 plus 3 over 5. 6 over 5. Yeah? Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Now we've got slightly more complex ones. Question 3. F of x equals x minus 8 divided by 3. And same thing again. By this stage, you should probably be able to do these things without even thinking. So y equals x minus 8 over 3. So 3y plus 8 equals x. And as I said, we can just jump to the conclusion now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. Cool. And same as before. Hang on, just label this. Same as before. 10 this time. Replace x with 10. So 3 times 10 plus 8. And that's 38. Whoops. 38. All right. This whole worksheet, right, one after another, it's actually an exercise in rearranging the formula. All right.
Yeah.
And that's basically the focus of it. So question 4, now it gets a little more detailed and complicated. You've got a square root in there. So you've got minus x plus 2 over 4, and the whole thing is square rooted. All right? So to find the inverse, hang on, let's do it that way. So we got y equals square root minus x plus 2 over 4. First thing you need to do to get rid of the square root, yeah? What do you reckon you do?
Square the y.
The other way around. If you want to get rid of a square root, what do you have to do?
Well,
Square both sides.
yeah.
Yeah? So what you're going to do is not square root the y, but square the y, i.e. you're squaring both sides. Yeah. That gets rid of the square root sign. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's what I meant. I think I said it wrong.
No problem. Square both sides. There we go. Right. So once you've got that, then it's just simply rearranging as we have done throughout the other questions. All right. So 4y squared and minus 2 equals, now watch out, minus x. Remember we started with a minus x there. So we need to swap the signs of everything. All right. So effectively x equals 2 minus 4y squared. And then remember we have to swap the x and the y. So y equals 2 minus 4x squared. That is the inverse function. There we go. Any questions on that one?
Sorry?
Any questions on that one?
No.
No? All right. And so, part B, again, there's a bit of repetition. and we just want to put 3 into that function. So 2 minus 4. Now watch out, it's got to be 3 squared first. So square the 3 first, then multiply by the 4. All right? So that is actually 2 minus 36. Answer is minus 34. Any questions on that one?
No, it all makes sense now.
All right.
I don't know why
good.
it was so like much more difficult.
No, it's just a question of rearranging, and once you know the technique, it's very easy. It's this next question that I think is much more important. This is where we're getting onto compound functions. All right, so you've got f of x is 2x plus 4. And then you've got another function, g of x, which is 3x plus 1. Right? And what they're saying, part A, find the value of x when the two functions equal each other. In other words, for what value of x does f of x equal g of x? Now, if this were a graph, if those two were to be plotted on graphs, all right, where they equal each other is basically where they intersect. So if you were to do this in a graphical method, all right, then you'd find that that would be the point of intersection between the two graphs. Does that part make sense? Yeah, you don't have to do that here. You can do it algebraically here. But in case you had to do it on a graph, it'd be the point of intersection. You find the x value for that particular point. All right. Okay, let's go and solve this. So we have 2x plus 4 equals 3x plus 1. All right. I'm going to keep the x's positive, so I'm going to bring the 2x to the right-hand side. So 3x minus 2x, oops, and 4 minus 1 on the left-hand side. Make sense? Yeah, all right. So basically we have 3 equals x. And it doesn't really matter whether you write 3 equals x or x equals 3. But I suppose we're all more comfortable with x equals 3. All right. So that's the first part of the question. Second part, it says find and simplify the expression for f g of x. Now this one I'll explain. Whenever you've got two functions of x or any variable, all right, one after another, you always do it, and I will put this into a color, it's important. Just pick something here, that will do. All right. So here, what this means is you put g of x first. All right. And then the result of g of x you put into f. Does that make sense? Yeah. So effectively what that means is we know that g of x is 3x plus 1. All right. So the result of that goes into f, so 3x plus 1. Remind yourself that f of x, right, is 2x plus 4. Okay. What this means, and this is the important bit, whatever you have in the brackets is what you put wherever you have an x. Does that sentence make sense? Yeah. So I'm going to treat the 3x plus 1 as my input, as my sort of x, if you like, in quotation marks. All right. So that means I've got 2 times whatever I put into the function, right? So that's 3x plus 1. And then you've got your plus 4, right? So working that out, f of 3x plus 1, multiply all of that out, 6x plus 2 plus 4, 6x plus 6. That seems a little simpler than I thought. You could then write that as 6x plus 6, or factor that out. There. Now, watch out. You know the question? It says, simplify the expression for fg of x. All right? That's why I factored it at the end. You need to simplify it as much as you can. Any questions on that one?
No.
No? All right. And then we have part C, last part of that question. And now it's doing it the other way around. G f of x. Okay? So this one, you put result of f of x into g of x. Yep. So remember f of x is 2x plus 4. So this is g of 2x plus 4. And g of x, if you remember, is 3x plus 1. All right? So g of x, 3 times the input plus 1. Does that bit make proper sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you sure? Any questions on that one?
No.
No? Okay. And expand the brackets out. 6x plus 12 plus 1. So you got 6x plus 13. Right? Is g f of x. All right. Right. And you've got one other question here that's interesting. All right. And I want to cover that with you because it might throw you off initially. So f of x, they've said, is 5 over x minus 1, and g of x equals 4 minus 2x. Okay, those are your two functions. The first part of the question, A. Now here's a little trick. Can you hazard a wild guess as to what that's going to be? It's f of the inverse of f of 2.
On the worksheet it says -2.
My apologies. There we go.
Oh. Is it gonna be like f multiplied by the inverse multiplied by 2?
Yeah, not multiplied. It's f of the inverse of f of 2.
Oh.
Now, here's the trick. The f and the inverse of f. So imagine you take one step back and then it's saying take one step forward. Where do you end up?
Same place.
Yeah. So what you're doing is you're putting -2 in the inverse function, i.e. going backwards, and then you're going forwards with the same thing. So it actually ends up as just being -2.
Oh, okay.
So whenever you have a function and the inverse together, right, like this, has no effect, no change. Make sense?
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a trick question, that one. But it's a very useful result to remember, right?
But then why is it like 2 marks if it's just that?
Because you need to write it down properly.
Oh, okay.
It's all right. Shall we? Do you want to work it out? Let's work it out. Let's do the inverse of f first. Let's find the function. So that is going to be found by y equals 5 over x minus 1. All right. And so we've got x minus 1 equals 5 over y. And so x equals 5 over y plus 1. So that is your inverse function. Yeah? Swapping the x and the y. So the next bit is x equals 5y plus 1. All right? And I want to swap the x and the y. All right? And so this I've gone silent is that it's giving me an unexpected result. It doesn't quite make sense. So y should be right. This is the bit that's confusing me. I think it's the wrong way around. So what have we got? If we now put in minus 2 into that, yeah, y, or the function, equals that. So minus 1.5, isn't it? Okay. Then we put that into f of x. And look what happens. 5 over the whole of minus 1.5 minus 1, which is 5 over minus 2.5. And the answer is minus 2. There. Does that make sense? You're muted.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah? Sorry, the previous bit, I think I misplaced a fraction somewhere. That's why it didn't work out. So now you see the proof of what I was saying earlier. Yeah?
Yeah.
So the function of an inverse function, i.e. the same one, it has no effect. You end up where you started. Okay? And so that's the proof of it. Then part B, we want to do g of 3. All right? That means putting 3 into g first, getting the result, and then putting that result into g again. All right? So the first thing, g of 3. Now the function g, if we remind ourselves, go back here, is 4 minus 2x. All right? So 4 minus 2 times whatever we're putting into the function, which is 3. So 4 minus 6 is minus 2. Happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. And then we put that result. So just keeping our notation clean, g of 3 is the same as g of minus 2. All right? So that is going to be 4 minus 2 times minus 2. Minus 2 times minus 2 plus 4. So the whole thing is 8. Is that okay? Right. Final part of the question. Simplified expression for f g of x. All right. And let's see what we get from here. So effectively, we want to do the g of x first and then put that into f of x. All right. So that means f of the function of g, which is 4 minus 2x. Do you agree? Yeah. And f of x, again, just write that down on the side here, is, remember, 5 over x minus 1, right? So we replace the x with this whole expression, 4 minus 2x. Now this is where a little bit of algebra is going to come in. So 5 over 4 minus 2x minus 1, right? Just tidy that up. 4 minus 1 is 3 minus 2x. That is actually your answer. Simple as that. Any confusion?
No.
No?
It's just a lot to remember.
Yeah, it's a bit of practice. That's all you need. Okay. And do you want to try that last question, question 7?
Okay.
Yeah? Be brave, give it a go. All right, carry on, Sunat.